Okay, Mark, so how do we get the process started?
So typically I forge my tongs from 5/8 square, 8 inches to 5/8 square, but a lot of folks are having problems getting that entry point. So with Pops, we came up with this flat pattern version of most of the tongs that we use. And this one's a really nice, simple twist pattern. We're going for 3/8 sticks, so they're super stout and hardy. And these have been cut out. So they're a little sharp on the corners compared to how I usually have my tongs, where I forge them into more of like an octagonal format. So I'm gonna start off, I've got one in the fire over here. I'm gonna start off with the jaw side of it. This is one of the prototypes that I did where the tips here are drawn down on a taper. You can do this with either a hammer or you can do it in the grinder. I actually took one of the halves earlier and put the ground bevel on it. And I also put a break on the corners down here. So it's more comfortable in the hand. It's kind of octagonalized, as it were. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it. My idea of this is giving people a real fast and easy access to making a pair of tongs when they need a pair of tongs. And if it means stepping up to the grinder, putting a little twist in here, throwing a rivet in it, and you're ready with a pair of tongs, awesome. If it means you want to do a little bit of forging, get that thing shaped up with a hammer, that's also a perfectly decent option. So we'll step in, we'll start with the forging side.
Mark, what's the first step?
The first step I want to do is create that twist here in the jaw in order to take it from a flat format and break it into that kind of 90-degree turn. Remember, there is a left-handed one and a right-handed one. So if you are right-handed, you want to turn it down to this right-hand side. If you're left-handed, you'll turn the other way, right? So it's just a little thing to be aware of. I've got a pair of my hand-forged flat bits, and this was the original prototype that we made. We actually made, in the final pieces, we made the reins a little bit longer, so that way you don't have to draw out the reins. I'm going to use these to twist them. You could put them in a vise and just put a wrench on it, you know, a regular channel lock or something like that. Give it a quick twist to that 90 degrees. So if I'm supporting it nicely at that rivet plate, so right there, I can just grab it, give it a nice twist, get it around to that 90 degrees there, and that way I'm kind of set up pretty solid. It does have a little bit of a twist here. You can leave that in or you can dress it in with your hammer. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. I'm going to pop that back in the fire and forge in the taper on the tip. The reason to forge in the taper on the tip, you don't have to, but the reason is that if you've got a piece down in your fire, that flatness on the tip allows you to scoop in and grab it real easy. If you leave it dull and flat, which is useful if you want something that's real heavy and stout, but if you've got that little taper in it, it makes it easier for picking stuff up out of the inside of the forge, and it doesn't keep bumping into the material, if that makes sense.
What are you looking for the heat of the tongs to be while it's in the forge before you take it out?
So as I look into the fire, the bit that I want to work on next, which is the jaw portion, I want to make sure that that's nicely up to the same incandescence as the inside of the fire. It should almost disappear in there. If your material's too cold, it's not going to move easily for you. So make sure it's good and hot, it'll move easy, and get it back in the fire often. Often I'll see folks trying to hammer it well into the black range. There's no point. Throw it back in the fire, make your life easier. Also allow the material to move easier for you. With mild steel, it's not so much of a problem, but if you're using tool steels, you can have problems of causing microfracturing and stuff like that within the steel. So just keep it hot and don't overwork the material. So I'm going to drop that fishtail onto the tip. It's basically like a little chisel point. I'm going to flatten that up a tad and then come in nice and straight at it. I'm trying to drop about a 22.5 degree angle. Kind of working side to side, and you'll see how it flares out. for me to bring that in, which will also help with the squaring, I turn it on its side, give it a couple of licks from one side, flip it over, give it a couple from the other. You start seeing it coming in nice and parallel. It also builds out that tip. Come back in, a little bit more cleanup. Back to the sides. Good and easy. And whilst I'm at it, I've got that little twist in there, so I can come in, give that a little bit of a dress, which is kind of half on, half off the anvil here. I'll come over here, work that in a little bit there. The jaw has kicked slightly to the left, so I can just give it a little tap there, and it's coming up nicely in plane there, which works well. I don't want it leaning too far this way, and I don't want it leaning too far this way. I essentially want that center line to run through the rivet, through to the tip, and that should give me a good gripping position when I assemble the tongs. Right, so on the jaws, when you forge it, you'll kind of get a little bit of swelling across here. So I'm going to come in and bump up the front side of these tongs just to square them a tad. Remember that you have to make two that are the same size, so at some point you're going to have to be able to measure them and match them. When I go to hammering that front end, you can just use the mass of the rein and your body holding it, but you can also hang that lip over the edge of the anvil to give you a little bit of back pressure. So I'll show both positions, see how it works. So if I'm coming here, I can hammer it straight back like that. Or I can turn it on edge, use the anvil itself to give me a little bit of solidifying support. Back to the top, doing that angle attack, back to the side. And if you do a mediocre job of squaring up this and you're still having problems, clean it up with a file or take it to a grinder, an angle grinder, something like that. Make your life easy. I'm pretty happy with that. No real problems. Doing straight. And I would say I'm now ready to flip it around and forge out the tongs. I've got a pair of bolt jaws that I'm going to use. I use bolt jaws a lot, but it gives me a fairly decent grab there. You could use a T-tong or a box jaw tong, something like that. And I'm just going to knock in the corners through here. As I said earlier, you can do it with a grinder just as much as doing it with a hammer, but I'll show you how to do it with a hammer so you know how to do that as well. Now I'm going to come through and knock in the corners here. As I said earlier, you can do that with a angle grinder, you can do it with a bench grinder, whatever you've got. You can use a 2x72 if that's what you have. I'm just running down these corners, trying to keep the plane of the corner underneath supported, try not to roll it. Make sure your grip in your tongs is maintained pretty well. You could just as well use a pair of vice grips. I know it's kind of a little bit of sacrilege, but I don't care. You'll notice I'm going around all four sides. It's getting a little bent up, I don't mind. It'll self-straighten in a second. If you find that you can't manage the whole length, just do a little bit at a time, like 3 or 4 inches. That way you can kind of keep more control of it. I'm knocking that angle in now. So I did 45 first on my first pass. I'm doing more like a 22 degree. So just a little bit of turn. I run that all the way to the tip. The other way. Getting really to the bottom of my work zone. And this is the fun part about long things. If you see that, I've got rotation running down this piece. That's really common. So I'm going to take one mahit and run down the sides and flatten it and true it all up. It's super easy. You just have to be consistent with your overlapping hammer blows. And as you run from the back end, holding it flat and true, that twist will slowly work itself out from the far end. All right, time to take out that twist. I'm going to start right at the back. Just nice and flat. I'm going to go at a bit of a long position on the anvil. If I hold it true, just nice overlapping hammer blows. I'm dropping a strike about every half an inch, something like that. And you can see that twist slowly working out. Not hitting it hard. This is the difference between forming and forging. So I'm just trying to unbend it, really. All the way to the tip. And I'll come back to finishing up that back line. And the only reason to do this is to make the reins of the tongs feel comfortable in the hand. Otherwise, you know, if you've got bulletproof hands, go ahead, keep the sharp corners, or, as I say, give it a whack with a grinder or a file, whatever you've got. All right, last pass for straightening. You'll see that my reins have taken an upward set, so I just flip it this way and use the length of the anvil again to straighten her up. Here's a little fun one for you. A lot of people want a super flat anvil. I personally think you can't straighten anything on a complete, well, it makes it trickier to straighten things on a super flat anvil. So having just a tad of bow in there is nice. I'm just trying to get it so it has a slight upward kick from that flat plane. So if you look at that there, this toes in slightly, this one kicks out at about a 5-degree angle. That way when you set up the jaws are touching here, you got a little bit of space at the rear. Cool? At that point, you can cool it off, make your second one, try and get it to match up. All should be well. Yeah. So remember that you'll be turning to that right-hand side. So if you are going to put that fillet laid in on the back, it's going to come in from this side because that'll be on the low side. I want to come to about kind of 2/3 thickness there. So I'll set my angle back about like that. And then on the back end here, I always leave a little bit of straight before I start knocking in those corners. And then on the corners, I'll just put a little space about Sharpie width all the way down, all 4 sides. All right? I'm just keeping an eye on that, making sure it's coming down even. It's starting to come back to my line. I like to draw on stuff. It gives me something to shoot for. Pretty uniform and even. If you want to get real OCD about it, you can get all your grind lines going in the right direction, break all your corners. You can take out all the bone lines as well from when it was cut out. And then on these, I just put a little break on the short side. Being slightly heavy to the left side of my belt. Solid. If you're more into grinding on a wheel, that's perfectly fine, grind on a wheel. In my shop, I've got a flat setup that I use most for everything. I find most comfortable here. that's just broken up those corners. If you want to get real crazy with it, you can come through, really desection that out if you want to, but it's up to you. For me, this is fine. It will reduce the wear on my hands, so I'm not getting a sharp corner in there. And I'm all set up to heat this up, twist it, and assemble. That way you can kind of do it down and dirty and fast. And as I said earlier, you can just as easily use an angle grinder or a bench grinder, whatever you've got kicking around your shop. If you don't have any of those, get a file, go and find yourself a good hearty file, knock it in with a file, it won't take that long. Cool. So here's a little interesting situation. If you forge it rather than grind it, your jaw is actually going to wind up being longer, right? So you're looking at, maybe an extra 1/8 inch. So if you are going to forge them all. If you're going to grind them all. Don't make any difference, just pick one. So this is one of the halves that I just did 100% stock removal. When you're doing the twist, just break them out like that so you're opposing each other. Give it a little turn. About there. Should do it. Oop, not too far. And then if it gets a little kick like that, you can just give it a little knockdown. Just address the twist. That's good. Lovely. Cool. Right, so once you've got your two halves looking the same, matching up, make sure that they're good and cold before you grab a hold of them. Steel stops being incandescent at about 1100 degrees, so don't grab a hold of the hot stuff and have bad regrets. You should find that they all line up nice and beautifully, and your rivet comes in the kit, so you don't have to even go out and source a rivet. You can pop this in. These are pre-annealed rivets, so that means you can set up your tongs, a little bit of width in the back over here, and I can preset that rivet just a little bit. See how it's got a little bit of a swell on there, and it's brought everything nice and tight. If you have problems with there getting a gap in here, you can monkey it. And monkeying you can do sometimes over a pritchel hole, something like that, or you can take a nut, literally just place a nut on there or a piece of tube and push everything a little tighter together. It's just in case your rivet plate for whatever reason doesn't bind up and come true. Now another thing you'll notice, especially on these 1 inch wide jaws, this is 3/4 of an inch here. This is 3/8 and 3/8. So it's 3/4 of an inch, which means we've got a little bit hanging over here. So we've got a 1/4 inch. We want to split that 50-50, but we'll only do that once the rivet's set in there. It's pretty easy. First thing is just set that rivet, don't worry about it too much, and then we'll align the jaws and have a discussion about aligning the rails. Stick the whole thing in the fire and then just allow the whole thing to heat up nice and even. Just take it, cool off the range, make sure I'm real good. Then the first thing is to set that rivet down. I'm just going to push straight down on it at first, get to about there, and then if I want to I can dome it off. I often just dome it a little bit with a hammer, something like that. You can use a ball peen, get it real pretty, or a rivet snap if you want to, but that's pretty good. Now we've got that offset across there. If I hold it sideways, give it a couple of licks here, a couple of licks over here, you'll see that it starts dog-legging in quite nicely. I might have to come reset my rivet every once in a while. Just working down either side nice and flat. When you get to about here, the rivet is pretty well set. Got a little bend in my rein there. I want to knock that out. I want to start relieving that rivet. There we go. You get it moving, because if you cool this off at this point and you haven't got it moving, it will seize up on you. Now we can start getting into some of the details. Get my reins into the right position, nice and parallel to each other. Sometimes they'll get a little bent. Here's the thing to think about. If you don't want to do it this way and would prefer to heat up the rivet with a torch, like an oxyacetylene torch, you can do. It doesn't make any difference. Coming in here, just squaring up that grip, the jaw. Sometimes they'll get a little twist on them, so just match them up. And come together. There we are. You'll see at this point my tips of my tongs are coming together quite nicely. Drop that jaw a tad. And this is just me kind of tinkering, trying to get this kind of an A shape, right? Think of it as a capital A. So this is the top of your A and your crossbar and the handle's coming up. You want everything to lay flat and true through. If you have a particular thickness of material, say you're trying to go for something the same thickness as your drawers, you can put a pair of flats in there to help level out the thickness so you can set the reins to the right width for your holding. So by hammering on that, giving a little squeeze, I can actually close up the reins a tad. Then come on in. Look at that, the handles are in a nice position width-wise, coming down to a nice close tip here. If you really want to get obsessive compulsive, you can actually dogleg the handle. So if you look at this one, I doglegged it so that it runs parallel, and then where it converges from the square stock into the octagonal, I've kind of doglegged it through, right? It's pretty easy, but folks get lost with it sometimes. So generally I come on the hardy hole and notice that the rivet's off. I'm right at that transition. I'm going to give it a couple of whacks. That was 2 strikes. Flip it over, do the other one exactly the same. So now when I bring my tongs together, you'll see that they kind of converge. I then want to pick that halfway point about here and put 2 more strikes on it to bring the reins back to parallel. Be consistent with those hammer blows and the work will do itself. That's not too bad. A little bit of an adjust. And for some folks that's really important. For others they don't care at all. I like the fact that the reins will sit true in my hand. I've got to tweak them a bit. I want this line to run through the center of my tongs there. Touch. I feel okay with that. Now to cool them off, don't just cool them straight off, you've got to keep moving them so you don't seize that rivet. Go into your bucket of water, you'll notice it will start to seize up. Keep wiggling it. There we go. There you are. Good pair of tongs, ready to use.